Hello everyone, this is EGWwrites, the author and creator and voice of Lady Eilean. This audiobook video is a companion piece to the novel Lady Eilean, which is available to read for free at wattpad.com. You can find this book and a handful of others on my profile. To view that, please visit wattpad.com/EGWwrites. Two quick housekeeping notes before we get started. Number one, this book will contain adult content, so listener discretion is advised. Please use headphones or listen privately. Number two, I live in New York City, and as much as possible, will try to edit around city sounds like sirens, car alarms, shouting, traffic, and etc. But sometimes there is no avoiding it. My apartment is a little too small for a recording booth. Thank you for your patience. Now, grab a cup of coffee or tea, snuggle up, and let's read. Lady Eilean, Chapter 47. Alex would do what he could to stall Mother, but I had little time. As I ran through the courtyard, I shouted at everyone I crossed to find Enos and Angus and bring them to the main hall. Servants dropped their work and scattered, no doubt alarmed by my panic. A soft, wooing voice reminded me that I was Laird now. Finery and gowns were unnecessary to maintain my appointment or position. My confusion and nausea at my mother's return smothered that voice. In 5 minutes, I was no better than the trembling child she had left behind. There simply wasn't time. Inhaling deeply through my nose, doing my best to put my thoughts at ease, I ran faster. Careening through the castle, I flew through the double doors of the main hall and skidded to a halt in the dark stillness of the room. She was just going to have to meet me as I was. She'd survive it. I'd survive it. There wasn't enough time. Pants, paint splattered, sunburned, disheveled in every way. I gave up on the idea of making myself look acceptable and focused on making myself calm. I pulled the thin leather strap from the end of my braid and finger-combed my quarrelsome curls into haphazard submission, pulling out as many blades of grass as I could. My hands trembled as I pulled it back and twisted it into a tight bun. What would I say? What would I do? Maids had followed me into the hall and were pulling open the curtains, allowing light to flood the room. How they knew what I needed was beyond me. We never used the main hall. We entertained no guests. Alex and I preferred to eat in the kitchens or in my rooms. My heart nearly caved in when I realized that despite its disuse, they had kept the room in excellent condition. There was no dust or disorder to contend with. The Laird seat gleamed and looked polished. The room was chilly without fires roaring in the fireplace that lined the room, but that was manageable. If Mother had come home to a dirty hall. I spoke to each woman, my hand pressed over my heart. Thank you. Thank you. I almost cried from the relief of their support. A porter walked in, stiff-backed and serious. Are we expecting guests, ma'am? Alex is leading. I licked my lips and smoothed the front of my shirt. This porter, 16 years old, would not have known my mother. We have a guest. Please escort Alex to the main hall as soon as they arrive. The porter bowed and left. I walked around the room, trying to steady myself. My boots echoed against the stone, clunking and loud. Unfeminine and unrefined. I sat in the Laird seat, thinking that was the correct thing to do, but after a moment jumped out of it, shaking the tingling pricks of nerves out of my fingers. I paced, gulping air and exhaling in loud, audible sighs. The maids filtered out. There was nothing to do but wait. My heart beat a mad ricochet inside my chest. How did I feel? I couldn't tell. The situation was unfathomable. Either she was back from the dead, or Angus and Enos trotted in through a side door looking flustered. What is going on? Enos asked, smoothing her hair. You scared the devil out of my guards with your shouting, Angus added. I opened my mouth to answer, but the large doors at the top of the hall groaned open, their ancient hinges squeaking. Alex entered first, then Mother. She seemed so small. Her eyes darted around the room. She sniffed in distaste at the empty fireplaces and rubbed her arms to ward off the chill. When she deigned to look my way, her eyes widened and she dropped her arms to her sides. I blushed as memories of never measuring up to her expectations flooded me with a mix of shame and defiance. A normal daughter would run toward her, desperate for a mother's embrace. We should be sharing tears and kisses and shouts of joy. But that had never been my family, and that had never been me. I couldn't force myself to move, to do anything but stare stone-faced as she made her way closer. Alex came to a halt before me and took a sidestep, positioning himself beside me. Mother cocked her head, realization dawning in her bunched brows. That was you? Out by the gates? I swallowed my fear, bit back my rage. It was. Resentment ran through me like ice. It was unexpected and almost knocked me off balance as it gutted me. Battling it back, I ignored the gleaming claws of this base emotion. Mother looked me up and down, taking in my appearance with a frown. For the life of me, I couldn't remember if the deep lines in her face and the sadness in her eyes had always been there, or if they were the effects of the war. Had her face been softer before? Was the hard set of her jaw a souvenir of her years away? She reached out, as if wanting to caress my cheek, but our distance prevented it. Dropping her hand, she grimaced. "I did not recognize Lord Leslie at all," Mother said, rocking back a step. "I hope you will forgive me, Eilean, for not knowing you." The howling anger inside my chest feasted on her hesitance. I had never seen her so ill at ease. It felt like a triumph, but it had the greasy aftertaste of contempt. Angus cleared his throat and stepped forward, his face a florid red. He stared down at my mother under his bushy brows. "You address Laird Eilean MacLeod, ma'am. I suggest you address my lady as befitting her status and title." Mother scowled at him, but Angus only puffed out his chest and crossed his arms. I bit my lips to keep from smiling. "Angus, meet my mother, Maeve McIntosh MacLeod," I said, laying a soothing hand on his elbow. "Mother, this is Angus Boyd, captain to the arms at Stormway, among other things, and lord in the Northern Isles." Angus's bushy beard twitched, but he inclined his head respectfully and stepped back. I heard Enos inhale behind me. "I hope Alex was helpful with your horse," I offered, my voice thin. Mother oogled, her eyes sweeping between Alex, Angus, and me. I could see the rising barb ready to be unleashed from her sharp tongue in reaction to my title. "Laird?" she said, her tone low and her blue eyes flashing. I gestured to Enos, who stepped forward. "Enos McClurkin, lately Laird of Crag's Mist, librarian and legal custodian. For the island charter of 935, if an island or estate is abandoned, any person who has assumed or was left in control for 5 years or more is regarded as Laird by default. This rule has never been struck from the charter or challenged." Enos and I shared a tight smile. Her eyes glowed like embers. Her own wrath and resentment shimmered under the surface. No one by my side was in any way ignorant of my family's relations. No one in this room had an ounce of loyalty to the woman standing before us. As if sensing that distrust, Mother took a few steps toward me, closing the distance between us. She pulled me into a tight embrace. "Well, isn't that a surprise?" she said, her voice insincere. My arms hung limp as I endured the vice-like grip of her hug. My mind was like a black tundra, nothing to see, nothing to feel. I noticed a trickle of servants had made their way into the hall. They stood in the doorways watching, whispering back and forth, the older ones informing the younger of who had arrived. After a while, Mother pulled back. "I can't believe how you've grown. I hear that's what happens to children." She kissed my forehead and released her hold on me at last. Turning to Alex, she said, "As I said earlier, I'm surprised to see you here, a mainlander living in the islands in peace." Alex bristled but recovered, offering a serene smile that did little to thaw the ice in his eyes. "Stormway has always been home. I maintained neutrality in the war because of it." There was a candor in his voice so pure I almost cried. "So you're married then," Mother said, turning to me with an arched brow. I ignored her. "What are you doing here? Where the hell have you been?" "It's a long story." She looked around the room. Her eyes were pleading, suggesting that this was not a story to be told in front of the servants, or the friends that stood at my back. Bess arrived, Wallace's hand gripped in her own. My sister's face was pale and contorted in a mask of petrified horror. A large kitchen maid, known for having a fearsome temper and a taste for blood sport, angled herself in front of Bess and Wallace. She nodded to me, assuring my family's protection from my mother. "Are we to expect father and my brothers too?" I asked. "I don't think this is the time, Eilean," Mother whispered. "Laird MacLeod or Lady Eilean," Angus grumbled. "We discuss such matters openly now," I said. "Anything you have to say regarding the soldiers of Elmsmere is the business of everyone who lives here. I dare say they suffered enough from your negligence and correspondence." Mother bristled, her eyes narrowing. "And if I dare say that your tone and manner are most unbecoming?" My cold, unamused laugh bounced across the room. "How typical," I said, rolling my eyes. "I have half a mind to deny you shelter in this castle." "You dare. I do dare, Mother, for your mockery, for your abandonment. You did not try to provide information to the women, children, and elderly you left behind. You robbed them of their fathers and husbands and sons with no cause, and now you waltz in and expect what? Everything to be precisely as you left it? Ladies bowing and scraping at your feet for a chance to sit in your sewing circle? The people in this room suffered. We nearly died. Yet you insult Alex, who has done more to keep this estate afloat than our family ever did. And you sneer at my allies because they would dare inform you of my rightful position. Mother took a step back, her mouth going slack. You would dare remain silent in the faces of the people in this hall who trusted your husband and have no information except that the entire MacLeod forces were lost. People who had to watch every other island regiment return home knowing they would never know what happened to their loved ones. Mother looked at Alex, fury consuming her face. You would let her speak to me like this? Comport your woman at once, Lord Leslie. Enos scoffed and covered her laugh with a cough. Angus let out a low whistle. The rest of the room shuffled and tittered, a wave of whispers echoing through the hall. Alex's eyebrows leapt off his forehead. He smiled and shook his head. It's Eilean's castle. What right do I have to interfere? Mother gaped at him like a dying trout. You must be exhausted from your travels, I said, trying to end this as quickly as possible. I will send someone to air out your rooms and find a mattress for your bed. For now, you may bathe and have lunch in my chambers. Cutting off the argument and giving orders quieted my nerves. Work. Always the work had been my saving grace. My, aren't we efficient? Mother said, her eyes glittering with an emotion I couldn't read but did not trust. Can't I lunch down here with you? We have been apart for so long, daughter. Do I not deserve a small meal by your side? I smiled but could feel that my eyes were lifeless. She would not bait me. We eat in the kitchens with the servants. You may join us if you wish. Her face fell. It's a rather busy day, I'm afraid. I cannot drop my schedule to squeeze in an impromptu luncheon with you. Alex and I are having lunch with the farmers. We must keep appointments. Quite, Mother ground out, her jaw jutting forward in annoyance. You can trust that Lady Eilean speaks the truth, Angus said, stepping in. He eyed me, and I let him proceed. As part of my duties, I maintain all correspondence in and out of the castle. Had we known you were coming, we could have made more fitting preparations. I wanted to roll my eyes at his formality, his soothing tone, but it had the intended effect. Mother relaxed and nodded, placated by the Northerner's natural command of civility, a crucial reason Angus, Callum, and Enos had become so indispensable to me. We will have dinner tonight, I grumbled. I shall await our meeting in the comfort of your hospitality, Mother said, her voice saturated in sweetness. A hot bath sounds like a treat. Nodding to a maid, I had her escorted out of the hall. As I watched her retreat, a great emptiness opened up inside of me. I let out a long sigh and shook my head, hands on my hips. What kind of wretch is not overjoyed to see her long-lost mother? What kind of ass screams at her instead? I asked. Enos simpered, smothering a cruel laugh. Trust me, homecomings are always bad omens. We did fine, considering. Bess rushed forward, her face blanched and her eyes wide. What is happening? I don't know, I said, rubbing my hands up and down her arms. But I promise you, Bess, you and Wallace are safe. None of us will let anything bad happen to you. You don't even have to meet with her if you do not wish. Thank you, she whispered, tugging Wallace closer to her hip. Enos scrunched up her face and looked toward the doors at the top of the hall, as if she could still see my mother lurking there. This shouldn't affect the delegation, but to be safe, I will go write Callum this minute. Thank you, I said, offering her a genuine smile of appreciation. And you too, Angus. All in my duty, my lady, he said gruff. I knew your family was a hard one, but if you don't mind me saying so, your mother seems crafty. We will have to watch her, anticipate her if we can, I glowered. Alex sidled up beside me and draped his arm across my shoulders. He pressed a kiss to my temple. Don't fret. She was road-weary and you were in shock. You two can sort it all out during dinner. I cringed, pulling my shoulders in tight, and groaned. You will remember that we were never particularly close. She seemed enraged that you would dare call yourself a Laird. A charming woman, really. Enos grumbled and then clapped me on the back. Good luck. You're not a child anymore, Eilean, Alex said, his eyes soft. Stand up for yourself, your people. You have a right to know what happened, why she is back. I dropped my head, nodding against his shoulder. I am so angry, I admitted. Angus grunted. Enos hummed in agreement. Who wouldn't be? Alex said. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the story. Subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell to be alerted when new chapters are updated. You can also follow me on Wattpad or Twitter at EGWwrites, where I will also share updates. As always, thank you for being a part of Eilean's journey. We are very glad that you're here. Until next time.